Hey guys, to help run the forums, host the website, and travel, we've introduced a universal service fee for in-depth coverage, including this video. The goal is to be transparent and unbiased. This is not an endorsement. It's a privilege to serve you. Let's get into it.
Hey, what's going on, guys? So I am here checking out the FLX Trail, a really cool electric hardtail mountain bike. I'm out here on the Jordan River Trail, kind of getting on the gravel to show you a little bit about what the bike does. It's actually kind of a brisk day, so I'm glad I got this raincoat to help me out. And anyways, let's go ahead and jump in. Okay, so the FLX Trail is from a company called FLX. Their website is kind of cool, flx.bike. I thought that was a great suffix. Anyways, so the FLX bikes, they have two of them right now. They have the Trail, they have the Roadster. Those are the ones that I'm going to be checking out, so stay tuned for the Roadster review. That one's going to be coming up sometime soon. But anyways, this is their hardtail mountain bike, and it's actually pretty cool. It's got a lot of great stuff on it. Let's go ahead and jump into some of the mechanical specs. So as kind of an overview, this is a hardtail bike, meaning that it has a front shock up here and it has no suspension in the rear, and moreover it has a solid seat post. So that's kind of the idea of a hardtail mountain bike. It's hard in the back and soft, if you will, up in the front. So the total bike weighs 44.5 pounds. That's with the battery. So the battery and the motor combined are about 14 pounds. The motor itself is 8.15 for how much it weighs. And the motor is actually down here. This is a Bafang mid-drive system. We'll kind of get into that in a little bit. But as a general rule of thumb, the electric mountain bikes weigh a little bit more than the road bikes because they have some more aggressive material on them, such as, you know, a wider tire, maybe a thicker wheel, and of course the suspension up here. So that suspension, that's going to weigh it down a considerable amount because that's what's providing 120 millimeters of travel. Yeah, so let's go ahead and jump into the mechanical specs. So this is a Suntour XCR suspension post. It has a 120 millimeters of travel, so that means it'll compress about 120 millimeters as you hit something. You also have up here kind of a lockout and a preload adjustment on the top of the fork. While we're down here, we have 13 gauge spokes that are holding the bike together, or holding the wheel together. As well as some silver screws on there. Coming up to the tires, these are some Maxxis Crossmark tires. As they're built for mountain biking, they don't have a reflective sidewall. They don't really have any puncture protection, which is kind of too bad, but they do have a fair amount of grip. You have some pretty aggressive kind of checkering on the tread pattern to kind of get some good grip on terrain such as this, such as the gravel that we're on right now. So this is the 27.5 inch tire. That means that the diameter of it is 27.5 inches, and it's a 2.1 for width, meaning that it's 2 inches, 0.1 on the width there. That's kind of like a standard mountain bike size these days. You do have some that are a little bit wider, some that are a little bit shorter, everywhere in between, but the 27.5 is a good, kind of like a middle point for all of that. So this frame is not entirely approachable. They do have kind of like this top tube that kind of slopes down a little bit. So the maximum or the minimum standover height is 29 inches. So it's 29 inches from the ground up to this point right here. So you do have like a little bit of a step in there, but all in all, it's not entirely approachable, and that's fine because this bike is meant to keep its rigidity for, well, for mountain biking. One great feature that I really like coming up front is the wide handlebars. These handlebars have a pretty good width to them. These are 700 millimeters wide. That's wider than a lot of them, wider than their Roadster bike. And they do that just kind of keep the balance pretty well when you triangulate your arms. You know, put one arm on that side, the other arm on that side, kind of comes back to the point of where the rider sits. Then you have a lot more control over the bike. You can kind of steer and manipulate much more in a sensitive manner, which is pretty nice. Also up here you have locking grips that are pretty good. They are FLX branded. Now these brakes are Tektro Auriga. They are hydraulic filled, so that means there's a reservoir up here, and the line comes down to the disc right here, which is a 180 millimeter disc, and you have a dual piston caliper right there that's grabbing onto the rotor itself. And you have a mirrored set in the back. The set in the back is also 180 with the same sort of system that I kind of described briefly. I'm glad that the bike actually did come with a reflector installed on the bike on the front. Sometimes they just toss the reflectors in the box, but this one actually came with it like that. You do have a bell on this bike, which is a fun little commuter accessory that you don't see on a lot of mountain bikes. That's to let people know you're coming, of course. You have a windowed gear indicator right here on the Shimano Alivio trigger system for switching gears. So as a regular bike, you know, you press that one in and that lowers your gear, and then you squeeze on the trigger on this side and that will increase the gear. And that's coming all the way back down here. This is coming to your 11 to 34 tooth rear cassette back here. And of course, coming up to the front, this is a 44 tooth chainring up in the front that's attached to this universal spider here. And this is a pretty good chain for keeping it all together. One thing that's really too bad, they don't have a slap guard right here on the top of the chainstay. The slap guard kind of goes over here. You can get like box tape or something like that if you want to be so bold as to install your own, or you can get something from a bike shop. They probably got plenty hanging around. So that's kind of a compromise that they put in there. Something I would like to see, especially on a mountain bike, because this is a mountain bike after all, and you're going to be bouncing on some roads. That chain can come down and kind of scratch up your frame, so it's really up to you. Again, this is the Shimano Alivio derailleur that you got hanging down here with the cable system going all the way up to the front of the bike. I like that the cables are internally routed. That's something for both the mechanical and some of the electrical components as well. You can see on this side of the bike you have the hosing for the hydraulic fluid that's also going internally through the frame of the bike all the way up to the front. So I think that's most of it for the mechanical system, other than a couple of touch points like the seat. This is an FLX seat, doesn't have a whole lot of padding to it. You could kind of get it worn in, but honestly it's a little stiff, especially combined with this rigid seat post. Now this seat post is a 31.6 diameter, meaning that you could swap this out with a different seat post, particularly one that has a suspension that kind of collapses as you go over some bumps. There's some from various companies like Connect, or from Thudbuster, or actually Sun Tour makes one called the NCX, which is pretty cool. Adding something like that onto here would more or less make the bike feel in a lot of ways like a dual suspension, and it's not too expensive either. So you could totally get a bike like this, save yourself some money, and attach a seat post onto it to kind of soften the load a little bit. So one last thing on the mechanical system is the 170 millimeter cranks that go into this ISIS shaft coming into the Wellgo pedals. These are some Wellgo aluminum platform pedals that have the side reflectors and little pins for your feet. They're pretty common, and I like them a lot. I really do. It's too bad when you see some that are not quite this nice, but these ones are good, perfectly good. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump into the electric system while we're at it. So as kind of an overview, the electric system is a mid-drive motor right in the middle. That's the Bafang M600 is the model of the motor, and you have a 48 volt 10.4 amp hour battery mounted clean inside of the down tube. So this down tube mounted battery, it doesn't pop out and obstruct a little bit of your triangle here. It actually fits all the way, as you can see, all the way inside of this tube. And it also locks into position, which is pretty nice. That little key, you put that in there, turn it. Let me get on this side just so I'm a little bit more skilled at it. Pull the battery out and boom, there's your battery. So the battery itself weighs 5.5 pounds. That's a 48 volt 10.4 amp hour battery. They do have upgrades available if you want to get a larger capacity inside of this same case that fits right in there. So you put the bottom end first, put the top end in, kind of squeeze it together, hear that click, the key out, and now you're ready to rock. So this bike does have a one-stage ignition system, if you want to call it that. There is a button down here you can press on the battery that kind of shows you your battery level with kind of an estimate of red, green, or blue for a light. But that's not necessary for starting it up. You start up the bike by pressing and holding this power button right here, and that will start up the display. Hopefully you can see that. Let's see if we can make good contact there. All right, so the display powers up. Shows you just a few things while you're up here at the main page right there. It shows you your speed that you're going right there on the right side. It shows you your pedal assist level on the left on kind of like this expanding bar. So if you're down in 0, that gives you no assist. And then pressing the plus button will increase your level of how much assistance you get all the way up to level 5. And then you press the minus button on the remote pad to kind of make that happen. And again, this is the remote pad. You have a plus button, you have a minus button, and you have the power button, or it cycles through the metrics. So let's go ahead and show you what those look like. So right now on the bottom right it says trip, and then you can press the button again. It goes through odometer, max speed, calorie estimate. I'm not sure how they get to that number, but that's what they got. A range estimate, and that range estimate will scale depending on what level of pedal assist that you're in. So average speed, ride time, which is nice, a little timer, power output in wattage. So if you increase the level of pedal assist, again, that will give you more of information on how much power the motor is outputting. A trip set, and the odometer again, and maximum speed that you've got. So we're kind of back at the beginning. So it cycles through there. On the top right, you have the battery level in a percentage. You can change that if you wish by going into the settings menu, by pressing and holding both the plus and the minus buttons, and that will go into kind of a settings menu right there. It'll let you change things for the display as well as kind of give you information on the bike. One thing I do recommend is when you go into the display, you go all the way down to the bottom, there is a setting for vibration. I'll go ahead and turn it back on. I had turned the vibration off because it is very strong. So the idea is that the display will vibrate kind of like your phone when you're inputting a number. It'll kind of buzz a little bit to give you that confirmation that you've actually pressed a button. But it's really aggressive. This is kind of one of my complaints about the system. It's kind of minuscule because it's not a big deal. You don't spend your entire time switching between pedal assist. But when you press the button, you can hear that. It's pretty darn loud. So I prefer it off. I have it turned off right now, and that's the way I like it. I'm kind of used to electric bikes, so maybe if this is a bike that you're kind of getting used to electric in the first place, you might actually like that feedback. Or if you want to kind of keep your eyes on the road, that's what this display is kind of mimicking, is a display to kind of help you keep your eyes on the road, or the trail in this case. It's pretty small, it's tucked away, it's not going to get in the way of anything, and yeah, you're kind of like keeping your eyes focused out here while this is just kind of giving you information if you need it. And so that's kind of where this is coming from, where this will buzz so that you don't have to look at it. You can just kind of keep pressing it if you need to, or switch it without having to take your gaze off of the trail that you're riding. So I know why they did it. It's just a little bit gutsy for me. But honestly, that's a pretty minor complaint because I really like this system a lot, this electric system. I can't say enough about how impressed I am with it. And I know that sounds like a pretty grandiose sort of thing to say, but honestly, I like it. This is the Bafang M600. This is a mid-drive motor putting out 500 watts of power nominal. Peaks at 850 watts, which is a lot of power to put out. This system on this bike is programmed to go up to 28 miles an hour on pedal assist and throttle. So this is a class 3 electric bike. So depending on the laws in your local area, you may want to look into getting it, I don't know, registered or whatever is required in that area that you're in. Here in Utah, a 28 mile an hour bike is perfectly legal as a bicycle the way it stands, so no extra anything to do there, and that's one thing I like. But anyways, this is a really good system because it has a torque-based pedal assist on it, as well as cadence sensors inside of the motor. And all of that is built right in here, right into this unit in there. This is a system that is now competing in performance with some of the big names in the electric bikes industry for system production. And I can see why. You know, this bike as it stands would have sold for a very high price some years ago based on the performance of it. And I know that from experience. I used to have an electric bike store. So yeah, this is a really good system that goes fast as well. It's not just a sleeper that kind of cuts out at 18 miles an hour or so. It fully goes up to 20, all the way up to 27.5 just fine. Past that point, it kind of cuts out a little bit. You know, they might have it set for something a little, you know, tuning it down so it doesn't go the exact 28. I don't know. But nonetheless, it feels really good. And one of my favorite things about it is that this bike has what feels like, I don't know if it's exact, but it feels like a shift detection within the electric system. Let's go ahead and see if I can dance around the bike to kind of show you what that looks like. So on this bike, I do have a throttle. By the way, this is an upgrade from FLX that costs 50 bucks. They sent it to me. The throttle, you can mount it on either side, on the right side, or you can put it on the left side. The thing is that if it's on the right side, you kind of got to put your thumb a little bit far over. I mean, my hands are relatively big, but got to put your thumb over a little bit to get there. It's not like something you can rest on and stay there the whole time. It's, you know, kind of got to extend a little bit. I don't know if that's going to affect any carpal tunnel to get there. But you can mount it wherever you want. You can take it off and put it up on this side. The problem is if you have it on this side, that the paddle on the little throttle right there comes into contact with the bottom of the remote on this side. So you can either mount it on the top, which kind of looks silly, or mount it on the bottom. But the result is that the throttle is either way underneath where you got to press it, or you got to take this remote and rotate it all the way. So to get to the plus button, you got to like crawl over to press the plus button and crawl back. So depending on where you put the throttle, it's kind of a tough compromise as to where you want to put it. And honestly, this is something that a lot of electric bikes come into contact with when they have a full-size grip. This is a full-size grip that can be changed out for pretty much any mountain bike grip you want. If they cut that in half and did like a twist throttle, that's one solution, but you know, it's their design. They kind of wanted it this way, and I like it. I do. I don't really use pedal assist all that much when I'm on the mountain bike. I like to have more control over it than using the throttle, a little bit more, I guess, like feedback in my feet. So that's one thing to consider, is the use of a throttle, whether you want to pay for that upgrade or not. But anyways, I mentioned the throttle because I wanted to show you what it's like when this bike is going through. You can, and I have done it before, you can ride on this bike, see if we can tilt it a little bit, hit the throttle down. You can shift gears on it, and the bike will smoothly shift and cut off power while you're riding the bike. So this looks pretty fantastic. I'm surprised I was able to do this without falling over because I'm holding the camera as well. But yeah, you can switch into any of the gears on the fly while you're giving the bike full throttle or full pedal assist. All right, so you can't really feel it by watching it go through that, but it does cut off the power, so you can switch through gears on full throttle without pedaling, which is a really, really nice feature that they have of this motor system. And honestly, I like it a lot. You got the battery weight in the middle of the bike, you got the motor weight right in the middle of the bike. This is a pretty slamming system, especially for the price that this bike is going out at. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump on the bike and show you the bike in action. So one thing that I forgot to mention while going over the specs that I'm kind of reminded while riding the bike is that the bike has a torque sensor. That's how the motor system works. It's based on how much effort you're putting in, and increasing the level of pedal assist will kind of increase the sensitivity of that torque sensor, meaning that when you have it like in level 1, you press down really hard and the motor kind of kicks in a little bit. When you crank it all the way up to level 5, then the motor kicks in, you know, pretty easily without a whole lot of effort, and it lasts for a little bit longer of a duration. So that's kind of a torque sensor in general, but this one is really nice. Some of the older torque sensors that I've seen on other electric bikes, if they're not set properly, then they feel really goofy. You know, you kind of get the hang of it. You got to like learn how to get it going. But this system is pretty advanced, I'm gonna say. It has a really nice torque sensor. I can tell that Bafang put a lot of effort into getting this one to feel good, and it totally does. I really like this this motor system. It's good. Okay, let's go over this bump. Boom. Okay. The bike is a little bit rough, but that's because it's a hardtail bike. I mean, no hardtail bike with a solid seat post is going to feel, you know, especially comfortable. So that's one upgrade that personally I would recommend for this kind of bike. It's not bad, but other than that, the bike is ready to go in a lot of ways. So yeah. Oh, I forgot to mention, this bike can be decked out as a commuter. They did put provisions for this bike to have a fender on it. There's fender mounts, there is bottle cage mount, as well as the lights that come with it, little kind of cheap lights, but that's, you know, something good enough to kind of get you through until you get your own set. This bike isn't really, you know, I would say targeted for the commuter. That's kind of what they have the Roadster for, but nonetheless, if you kind of like the suspension, if you like the color, you know, something like that, then yeah, I would totally consider this bike for that purpose as well. It's pretty versatile, I guess I would say. Oh, and one other great thing, the kickstand on this bike is mounted in the rear, so you don't get a whole lot of pedal lock when you're pushing the bike backwards. Okay guys, so we are here checking out the FLX Trail. I've got the camera pointed down at the drivetrain system so you can kind of see how it goes. I got off the gravel trail a little bit so that you could hear the motor system. It does have like a little bit of a whine to it, but it's putting out a lot of power, and that's pretty much the reason why. So yeah, let's go ahead and take it for a spin.
Okay, so that was a good example of the bike getting up to full power. We got pretty fast, about 25 miles an hour on that long stretch. So yeah, really fun all around.
Okay guys, thanks for watching. This has been a really cool bike, the FLX Trail. If you want to check out the full write-up, go to ElectricBikeReview.com and you can check out this and compare it with other FLX bikes, including the FLX Roadster, which is a bike that I'm going to be reviewing in the very near future, if it's not out by now. So yeah, you can also go there and participate in the forums if you'd like, ask a question, kind of hang out and kind of see all the other bikes and compare them. So yeah, thanks again for watching guys. Ride safe.